what's in it for us? So, what are we going to expect, or what are the lessons that we will be tackling in today's discussion? First, we have Chapter 1, Management and Organizations. We also have Module, the History of Management or Management History. And lastly, Chapter 2, Understanding Management's Context, Constraints, and Challenges. So, now let me give the floor to the first reporter, which is Miss Mary Taneo, to discuss about the first chapter, Management and Organizations.
Thank you so much, Donna Marie Agos. So before we go on to chapter 1, let us first define management. Please, next slide. So when you heard the word management, we can say that the root word is manage, which means conducting or supervising of something. And according to next please. And according to the strategic CFO, the management definition is a single or group of individuals who challenges and oversees a person or collective group of people and efforts to accomplish desired goals and objectives. So we can say that management includes the ability to plan, organize, monitor, and direct individuals. But in order for the management to plan and organize, monitor, and direct individuals, it needs to have a manager. So good morning everyone. Together with Miss Manalang, we are going to talk about the chapter 1, which is management and organization. Ibalik sa, please. So the learning outcomes for this chapter is we explain why managers are important to organizations, tell who managers are and where they work, describe the function, roles, and skill of managers, describe the factors that are reshaping and redefining the manager's job, explain the value of studying management. Next slide, please. So let us first read this A Manager's Dilemma. 12.7 million, the total number of people employed in the restaurant industry, according to the National Restaurant Association. Those employees hold jobs ranging from greeting and serving customers to cooking for and cleaning up after customers. There's a lot of action taking place in a restaurant. Sometimes calm and sometimes frenetic, as employees work together to provide customers what they want. And overseeing those employees is someone who must ensure that everything runs smoothly. Next, that someone is a manager. Lisa Green is one such manager, as the general manager of a popular and very busy restaurant in Springfield, Missouri. She oversees 100 employees, working long hours. Lisa is expected to lead her team and uphold the company's high standards so employees can do their assigned work efficiently and effectively. Like any hardworking manager, Lisa is continually trying to find ways to cut costs and make her restaurant run a little more smoothly. But her most important challenge comes from looking for ways to make her restaurant a better place to work. So try to put yourself in Lisa's place. So like many students, like many students, maybe you've worked in a restaurant industry and at some time or another. It's not an easy job. It can be hot, dirty, exhausting. Customers can be rude and demanding. And your work experiences, whether in a restaurant or in some other workplace, are like to have been influenced by the skills and abilities of your manager. So Lisa is a good example of what today's successful managers are like and the skills they must have in dealing with the problems and challenges of managing in the 21st century. So imagine you are Lisa, makaya nimo mo handle og 100 employees. Try to ask yourself, pag-handle gani sa uyab dili gani makaya, unsa na ba ka og handle og 100 people having different personality. So that is why Lisa is a very good example of what today manager are like. The reality facing today's manager is that the world has changed. In workplaces of all types, restaurants, offices, retail stores, factories, and the like, managers must deal with changing expectations and new ways of managing employees and organizing work. So in this chapter, we introduce you to managers and management by looking at why managers are important, who managers are, and where they work, and what managers do. So finally, we wrap up the chapter by looking at the factors reshaping and redefining the manager's job and discussing why it's important to study management. Next slide, please. So why are managers important? A great boss can change your life, inspiring you to new heights of both professionally and personally, and energizing you and your team to together overcome new challenges bigger than any one of you could tackle alone. So example, in a family setup, ang mga children's life depend on how their parents grew them. So example, si Jerome, iyang mama o papa kay sigig away, ya kanang murag dili mahimutang for me. So maapektuhan si Jerome. Ay possibility nga si Jerome kay magrebelde or kanang kuan. So these are the 3 examples why managers are important. Back up. So the first reason, organization needs their managerial skills and abilities more than ever in these uncertain and complex and chaotic times. So as organizations deal with today's challenges, the worldwide economic climate, changing technology, ever-increasing globalization, and so forth, managers play an important role in identifying critical issues and crafting responses. For example, John Zapp, general manager of several car dealerships in Oklahoma City, has struggled to keep his businesses afloat and profitable in the current economic environment, just as many other car dealers have. However, after 4 decades in the car business, Zapp understands that he's the one calling the shots, and his call right now is to focus on selling more used cars. How? By keeping inventory moving and by keeping his salespeople engaged through small cash payment rewards for hitting sales goals. His skills and abilities as a manager have been crucial in guiding his organization through these challenging times. And the second reason, they're critical to getting things done. For instance, in our chapter opening story, Lisa wasn't the person greeting and seating customers, taking their orders, booking their meals, or preparing a table for another customer. But she was the person who creates and coordinates the workplace systems and conditions so that others can perform those tasks. Although she opens pitches in when and where needed, her job as a manager is to ensure that all the employees are getting their jobs done so the organization can do what it's in business to do. if work isn't getting done or isn't getting done as it should be. She's also the one who must find out why and get things back on track. And the third reason, managers do matter to organization. How do we know that? The Gallup organization, which has polled millions of employees and tens of thousands of managers, has found that the single most important variable in employee productivity and loyalty isn't pay or benefits or workplace environment. It's the quality of the relationship between employees and their direct supervisors. In addition, global consulting firm Towers Watson found that the way a company manages and engages its people can significantly affect its financial performance. Also, a recent study of organizational performance found that managerial ability was important in creating organizational value. What can we conclude from such reports? So we can say that managers are important and they do matter. Next slide, please. So who are the managers and where do they work? So manager can be under the age of 18 to over age 80. They administer large corporations as well as entrepreneurial startups. They are found in government departments, hospitals, small business, not-for-profit agency, museums, schools, and non-traditional organizations as political campaigns and music tours. Some managers are top-level managers, while others are first-line managers. Managers can be women or men. And managers have exciting and challenging jobs. Next slide, please. So who is a manager? A manager is someone who coordinates and oversees the work of other people so that organizational goals can be accomplished. A manager's job is not about personal achievement. It's about helping others do their work. That may mean coordinate the work of a departmental group or supervising a single person. It could involve coordinating the work activities of a team with people from different departments or even people outside the organization, such as temporary employees or individuals who work for organization suppliers. Keep in mind also that managers may have work duties not related to coordinating and overseeing others' work. For example, an insurance claims supervisor might process claims in addition to coordinating the work activities of other claims clerks. So is there a way to classify managers in organizations? Next slide, please. So in this traditional structured organization, which are often pictured as a pyramid because more employees are at lower organizational levels than at upper organizational levels. Managers can be classified as first line, middle, or top managers. So at the lowest level of management, it is the first line managers. It managed the work of non-managerial employees, may called supervisors or even shift managers, district managers, department managers, or office managers. In the first line managers, employees who typically are involved with producing the organization's product or serving the organization's customers. And at the middle of the traditionally structured organization is the middle managers. They manage the work of first-line managers and may have titles such as regional manager, project leader, store manager, or division manager. In our chapter opening dilemma, Lisa is a middle manager. As the general manager, she is responsible for how her restaurant performs, but also is one of about 60 general managers company-wide who report to someone at corporate headquarters. And at the top part is the top managers who are responsible for making organization-wide decisions and establishing the plans and goals that affect the entire organization. May have titles such as executive, vice president, president, managing director, chief operating officer, and chief executive officer. So not all organization get work done with a traditional pyramidal form. However, some organizations, for example, are more loosely configured with work being done by ever-changing teams of employees who move from one project to another as work demands arise. Although it's not as easy to tell who the managers are in these organizations, we do know that someone must fulfill that role. That is, there must be someone who coordinates and oversees the work of others, even if that someone changes as work task or project change. Next slide, please. So where do managers work? It's obvious that managers do their work in organization. So what is organization? It's a deliberate arrangement of people to accomplish some specific purpose. So example, kay mga college or university, fraternities and sororities, government departments, churches, Facebook, your neighborhood, grocery store, the United Way, the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team, and the Mayo Clinic. All are considered organization and have three common characteristics. Next slide, please. Which is the distinct purpose, people, and deliberative structure. Distinct purpose typically expressed through goals that the organization hopes to accomplish. And people is to perform the work that's necessary for the organization to achieve its goals. In the deliberate structure, members do their work in which structure may be flexible with no specific job duties or strict adherence to explicit job arrangement. So for instance, at Google, most big projects, of which there are hundreds going on at the same time, are tackled by small focused employee teams that set up in an instant and complete work just as quickly. Or the structure may be more traditional, like that of Procter and Gamble or General Electric, with clearly defined rules and regulations, job descriptions, and some member identified as bosses who have authority over other members. Many of today's organizations are structured more like Google, with flexible work arrangement, employee work teams, open communication system, and supplier alliances. In this organization, work is defined in terms of tasks to be done, and work days have no time boundaries since work can and is done anywhere, anytime. Next slide, please. So the working world in 2020, dili na siya future kay 2022 naman ta karon. So a noted inventor once said, "My interest is in the future because I'm going to spend the rest of my life there." While this book presents a fairly accurate description of today's workplace, you're going to spend most of your work life in the future. What will that work life look like? How will it be different from today? Although no one has perfectly accurate window to the future, certain trends in place today, other insights into what tomorrow holds. We can extrapolate from those trends to sneak a peek at the future. We've arbitrarily chosen to focus on the year 2020 because It's close enough to most of you will be actively in the workforce, yet far enough away that current managerial practices are likely to have changed because they've become irrelevant or even obsolete. In the year 2000, Malcolm Gladwell's popular book, The Tipping Point, looked at how major changes in our society occur. Even at more than 10 years old, it's an interesting read and we recommend it. Many demographers have said that 2010 could be the tipping point of the composition of the US population. That's the year it's predicted that the number of babies born to minorities outnumbers that of babies born to whites. This is yet another trend indicator in which minorities are expected to become the US majority over the next 40 years. Although this demographic shift has been documented since the early 1990s, it appears that the tipping point has been reached, although this event has numerous societal implications. We're more interested in the implications for the work world that you'll be part of, implications such as what will employees' hiring and selection process be like? How will employees' training programs change? How will employees' reward programs be set up? Who will become the role models and business leaders that guide and shape our businesses? We will look at these types of issues in our future vision boxes located in various chapters. So strap on your visionary goggles and enjoy this intriguing look at the future. After all, you're going to be spending the rest of your life there. However, no matter what type of approach an organization uses, some deliberate structure is needed so work can get done. With managers over. So let me welcome you to Ms. Ruwani Margaret Manalang to talk about what do managers do.
So thank you for that, Mr. Neo. Next slide, please. So we learned from the previous reporter that managers work in an organization or company, and we can wonder, what do managers do? Well, managers are involved in the management process of a company or organization, wherein management is involved in coordinating and overseeing the work activities of others so that their activities are completed efficiently and effectively. The coordinating and overseeing the work activities of employees determine that one holds a managerial position, as they are the ones who manages their subordinates to work efficiently and effectively. So, what is efficiency? Next, please. Efficiency refers to getting the most output from the least amounts of input. It's often referred to as doing things right, and it seeks to limit the wasted input, which is costly for business. So, being efficient, one should practice doing things quickly in order to save time and effort. For example, just like the Han plant, who manufactures office furniture in Georgia, let its employees cut their inventory levels, reduce the production or manufacturing time for a single product, and ensure that the rates of projected products were low. So next, we have effectiveness. Next, please. Effectiveness is often described as doing the right things. That is, doing those work activities that will help the organization reach its goal. It is the capacity to attain an intended result. So its intention is to meet the desired goal regardless of the amount of input required. A company's goal is to satisfy the needs and wants of their customers. Thus, they strive to meet those demands regardless of the amount of input. For example, the Han Company's goal includes meeting their customers' demand, creating world-class manufacturing strategies, and making their employees' job faster and easier. So next slide, please. With these two work hand in hand, efficiency, which is the resource usage, and effectiveness, which is the attainment of the goal, an organization can pursue its success with its low resource waste and high goal attainment. Otherwise, it can be considered that the organization has a poor management. So next slide, please. So on the earlier part of the 20th century, Henry Fayol, a businessman, proposed the 5 functions of management, which includes planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating, and controlling. Now, there are only 4 management functions which we are going to tackle, and they are planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So first, can we have someone to read about planning? Okay, Ms. Larayos, please read.
Planning, they set goals, establish strategies for achieving those goals, and develop plans to integrate and coordinate activities.
So thank you for that. So in this management function, managers identify and select the company's goals and determine the corresponding courses of action in order to achieve them. So in short, they plan strategies for the betterment of the organization. So next we have organizing. Managers are also responsible for arranging and structuring work to accomplish the organization's goal. In these management function, employees are grouped together to perform specific jobs or tasks. Example, the managers will determine what should each of his or her subordinate do, how the tasks are to be grouped, or who should to report to whom, and where decisions are to be made. Next, we have leading. It is to work with and through people to accomplish goals. In this management function, managers has the capacity to encourage their employees to live their organization's vision and goal. Also, to have their subordinates continue their work and maintain good working environment. Lastly, after everything was planned, tasks were handed over, people were hired and trained, there should be an evaluation, and this is controlling. Controlling is the monitoring, comparing, and correcting work performance. These corrective actions were done in order to maintain or improve the organization's performance. The manager will evaluate so that they will be on track and can decide whether to improve or change their ways of doing work. So next slide. Mintzberg's managerial roles and a contemporary model of managing. So Henry Mintzberg, a well-known management researcher, studied actual managers at work. So, managerial roles, next please, refers to a specific actions or behaviors expected and exhibited by a manager. When we can hear the word managers, we can usually think about the responsibilities they have at hand, which leads us to have a higher expectations for them. So these managerial roles includes interpersonal, informational, and decisional roles. So can I have someone to read these interpersonal roles? All right, Ms. Abel.
Interpersonal roles are ones that involve people, subordinates, and persons outside the organization, and other duties that are ceremonial and symbolic in nature.
So this ceremonial and symbolic nature includes welcoming official visitors or signing legal documents. So interpersonal roles includes a figurehead, a leader, and a liaison. So next we have informational roles. It involves collecting, receiving, and disseminating information. It includes a role as a monitor, disseminator, and a spokesperson. So we have decisional roles. It entails making decisions or choices. The role includes being an entrepreneur, disturbance handler, resource allocator, and a negotiator. So next slide. So as we can see in the illustration, The interpersonal roles include the figurehead, leader, and a liaison. A figurehead, the manager performs social, inspirational, legal, and ceremonial duties. Next, the role of a leader is at the heart of the manager-subordinate relationship and managerial power. Then, as a liaison, the manager builds and maintains relationship with other companies. On the informational roles, it includes being a monitor, disseminator, and a spokesperson, wherein being a monitor, the manager seeks and receives information from various sources to evaluate the organization's performance, well-being, and situation. Next, as a disseminator, the manager communicates external information to the organization and facilitates information exchange between subordinates. Then, as a spokesperson, the manager relays information to other groups and entities outside of the company. So lastly, on the decisional roles, it includes manager who are an entrepreneur, a disturbance handler, a resource allocator, and a negotiator. Being an entrepreneur, the manager designs and initiates new opportunities for the company. Then, as a disturbance handler, they are involved in stepping into disturbances that may arise to deal with it, evaluate the situation, reallocate the resources, and provide adequate support to the company. Next, as a resource allocator, the manager oversees and controls resource allocation by evaluating major decisions involving resources. And lastly, as a negotiator, the manager takes charge of communicating and negotiating with other organizations, especially when they are trying to invest with their target investors, and even among members of the company. So recently, Mintzberg completed another hands-in and up-close study of managers, which he concluded that basically, managing is about influencing action. It's about helping organizations and units to get things done, which means action. So based on his observations, Mintzberg went on to explain that a manager does in three ways. This is first by managing actions directly. For example, negotiating contracts or managing projects. Second, by managing people who take action. Example of which is motivating them, building teams, enhance the organization's culture. And third, by managing information that propels people to take action, which is using budgets, goals, and task delegations. So next slide. So Robert L. Katz proposed that managers need three critical skills in managing. And these are technical, human, and conceptual skills. So can anyone read about technical skills? Oh yes, Ms. Ardiente.
Technical skills are the job-specific knowledge and techniques needed to proficiently perform work tasks.
So example of technical skills are the administrative and office skill, technical writing skills, analysis skills, and computer literacy skills. So human skills involve the ability to work well with other people, both individually and in a group. These are the manager's ability to motivate, lead, and control the behavior of his or her subordinate. So we have conceptual skills, are the skills managers use to think and conceptualize about abstract and complex situations. This skill includes having critical thinking, logical thinking, multitasking, decision-making, and troubleshooting. So next. Among these skills, it is important that top managers have the conceptual skills as they analyze a particular situation, identify new opportunities and resources, and decide on the best strategies and courses of action. Furthermore, as managers are the one who handles their people, it is necessary for them to acquire strong human skills, whether they be top, middle, or low-level managers. And lastly, technical skills are important skills to low-level managers, as they are the ones who handles employees that uses tools and techniques, or employees who are hands-on to their work. So next slide. So based on Dear Workforce, we're developing onboarding for new managers. What should be included? We can see the important managerial skills, and these includes managing human capital, inspiring commitment, managing change, structuring work and getting things done, facilitating the psychological and social context of work, using purposeful networking, managing decision-making process, managing strategy and innovation, and managing logistics. So next slide. So how is the manager's job changing? So can I have someone to read this? So okay, Faura.
Managers are dealing with global economic and political uncertainties, changing workplace ethical issues, security threats, and changing technologies.
So next slide. So we can see here the changes and impact of changes for the manager's job. So first change is digitization. Nowadays, technology keeps on improving, which makes our lives a lot easier than it was before. With these, managers adapt to the changes it brings as they shift organizational boundaries, virtual workplaces like Zoom or Google Meet, more mobile workforce, flexible work arrangements like if the work can be done at home, they adopt a work from home arrangements. Furthermore, digitization empowered employees and there is a presence of work and personal life balance. Next, there is an increased emphasis on organizational and managerial ethics, where the values are redefined, which helps an organization measure and manage risks and acquire a competitive advantage. So furthermore, next please. As there are a lot of business arising everywhere, there is an increase of competitiveness. Thus, managers need to innovate and take risks so that they can survive the changes occurring. Also, there will be customer service to assist the customer's needs and concerns, expansion and globalization, and efficiency and productivity to be improved to retain customers in this competitive world. Lastly, changing security threats or the threats within the organization or outside of it. With this, there will be risk management, uncertainty over future energy sources or prices, restricted workplace, discrimination concerns, globalization concerns, employee assistance, and uncertainty over economic climate. So next slide, please. So importance of customers to the manager's job. So can I have someone to read this first quotation? So yes, Ms. Macasero.
Email will be more efficient, but I want to hear the emotion. I want to hear the frustration. I want to hear the caller's level of comfort with the strategy we're employing. I can't get that email. Get through email.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Macasero. So this kind of manager understands the importance of customers. Without the presence of customers, most organizations would cease to exist because why would you sell if you have no customers to buy your products or avail your services? Yet focusing on the customers has long been thought to be the responsibility of marketing types. So next quotation is, let the marketers worry about the customers. It is how many managers felt, and the employee's attitude towards their customers can greatly affect the satisfaction of customers for the services given. So example, passengers of Qantas Airways were asked to rate their essential needs. The responses are usually linked to the employee's accommodation to them, like prompt baggage delivery, courteous and efficient cabin crews, and quick and friendly check-ins. So managers are recognizing that delivering consistent, high-quality customer service is essential for survival and success in today's competitive environment, and that employees are an important part of the equation. So, what if imong employees dili friendly and approach sa imong customers or dili quick to respond sa needs sa imong customers? Then there will be a possibility that customers will leave. So, without customers, a business will not run. With that, a managers cannot gain profit without a customer. There will be a tendency that the organization will shut down. So, next slide. So, importance of innovation to the manager's job. So, nothing is more risky than not innovating. So, innovation means doing things differently, exploring new territory, and taking the risks. If one does not innovate in this new era where technology already flourishes, then he or she will probably be left out. Innovative efforts can be found in all types of organizations. With this, since an organization needs to expand or enhance their products or services, managers should be open to innovation despite its risks. So with that, according to Chairman Ratan Tata of India, cut costs, think out of the box, even if the world around you is collapsing, be bold, be daring, and think big. So next slide. Importance of sustainability to a manager's job. Can anyone read this? So yes, Ms. Federicos.
From a business perspective, sustainability has been defined as a company's ability to achieve its business goals and increase long-term shareholder value by integrating economic, environmental, and social opportunities into its business strategies. Sustainability issues are now moving up the agenda of business leaders and the boards of the thousands of companies.
Thank you for that, Ms. Federico. So just like what the managers at Walmart discovered, running an organization in a more suitable way, sustainable way, will mean that managers have to make informed business decisions based on thorough communication with various stakeholders, understanding their requirements, and starting to factor economic, environmental, and social aspects into how they pursue their business goals. So next slide. So why study management? So this is the universality of management. So management is needed in all types and sizes of organizations, at all organizational levels and in all organizational work areas, and in all organizations, no matter where they are located. In all these organizations, managers must plan, organize, lead, and control. So, next, so whether the organization is small or large, non-profitable or profitable, bottom or on top, in the manufacturing, marketing, human resources, accounting, information system, and etc., management is needed. An organization with thorough system of management can lead to a successful business or organization and can gain new customers and opportunities. On the other hand, an organization with a poor management will lose their customers and opportunities. So next slide. The reality of work. Once you graduate from college and begin your career, you will be either managed or be managed. So because if you choose to work in a company, there will be a manager that will guide you to help you know the basics of your work, wherein later on, you can experience tougher jobs or can be given a chance to manage and handle people in your team. On the other hand, if you put up your own business, there is a possibility that you cannot do it alone. Thus, you will need workers and assign or manage them in their respective workloads. With that, as we have tackled earlier, management exists everywhere. We don't need to be a manager to experience management. But as simple as we are right now, we already experience management. Example of which is our groupings where we are managed by a leader, and we, as members, do the tasks given by the leader. So next slide, please. Rewards and challenges of being a manager. Yes, a manager's job can be both rewarding and challenging. As a manager, they do a challenging job than a regular employee. They may have duties that are more clerical, like compiling and filing reports, dealing with bureaucratic procedures or paperwork than managerial. They also have to deal with a variety of personalities since they handle a lot of people. Often have to make do with limited resources, motivate workers in a chaotic and uncertain situations so that they will not be down. Blend knowledge, skills, ambitions, and experiences of a diverse work group, and success depends on others' work performance. So, despite all of these challenges, a manager's job is also rewarding. First, they can create a work environment in which organizational members can work to the best of their ability, have opportunities to think creatively and use their imagination, help others find meaning and fulfillment in work, support, coach, and nurture others, work with a variety of people, receive recognition and status in organization and community, play a role in influencing organizational outcomes, and good managers are really needed by organization. So next slide, please. So that will be all for my report. Next reporters will be Donna Moriegas and Nicole Ann Islet.
Wow, thank you for your wonderful and informative discussion, girls. Right, earlier we discussed about who managers were and why they're important to organizations. We were also able to describe their functions, roles, and skills. We also learned the value of studying management, especially in today's generation. So now that we already know these things, it's time to go deeper to how and why management were formed and or what are their origins. Today, we're going to tackle management history or the history of management. Why do we have to learn history or why do we have to know the origin of a certain event or idea? Henry Ford once said, "History is more or less a bunk." Do we agree? Well, he was wrong. History is important because it can put current events in perspective. In this module, we're going to take a trip back in time to see how the field of study called management has evolved. What you're going to see is that today's managers still uses many elements of these historical approaches to management. So sit back and relax as we take you to the past. But before anything else, we have to present to you the learning outcomes. So these are the things that we're going to expect in today's discussion. First is we're going to describe some early management examples, explain the various theories in the classical approach, discuss the development and uses of the behavioral approach, describe the quantitative approach, and lastly, explain the various theories in the contemporary approach. So I will now give the floor to Ms. Nicole Asleet to discuss the first half of this module.
So good morning. So thank you, Donna. So next slide, please. So early management. Management has been practiced a long time. Organized endeavors directed by people responsible for planning, organizing, leading, and controlling activities have existed for thousands of years. So let's look at some of the most interesting examples. So next slide, please. So the first example is the Egyptian pyramids and the Great Wall of China. So, the Egyptian pyramids and Great Wall of China are proofs that projects of tremendous scope employing tens of thousands of people were completed in ancient times. It took more than 100,000 workers, some 20 years to construct a pyramid. So before sila nag-build sa pyramid, so di ba kinsa man ang nagmando sa mga workers sa ilang mga buhaton, like kinsa sa nagsiguro sa mga material sa site. So ang kana sila nga someone kay muna sila ang manager. So the manager is someone had to plan what was to be done. Sila ang nag-organize sa mga workers o sa mga materials nga buhaton and impose some controls to ensure that everything was done as planned. So next slide please. So another example of early management can be found in the city of Venice, which was a major economic and trade center in the 1400s. So the arsenal of Venice, so, kana silang mga ship were floated along the canals and every kanang stop mohunong sila kay kanang ngay mga materials nga ilang ipuno. In addition, the Venetian used warehouse and inventory system to keep track of the materials, human resource management function to manage the labor force, so including sa wine breaks and accounting system to keep track of the revenues and costs. So next please. So the third one is the wealth of nations. So Adam stated that the economic benefits of the division of labor for organization and society in his book, The Wealth of Nations, which was published in 1776. The division of labor or job specialization is the breaking down of jobs into narrow and repetitive tasks. Using the pin industry as an example, Smith claimed that 10 individuals, each doing a specialized task, could produce 48,000 pins a day among them. However, if each person worked along performing each task separately, it would be quite an accomplishment to produce even 10 pins a day. So, ang pagbahin-bahin to kuno sa mga buhatonon can save time ug mas dali ug paspas siya and also ma-enhance po ang mga individual skills sa mga workers gani sa ilang mga naka-assign nga trabaho. So next slide please. So the last one is the Industrial Revolution. So in late 18th century, when machine power was substituted for human power, a point in history known as the Industrial Revolution. So it became more economical to manufacture goods in factories rather than at home. Mas tipid o mas paspas mag-produce ng mga goods sa factories. So these large efficient factories needed to someone to forecast demand, ensure that enough materials was on hand to make products, assign tasks to people, direct activities and so forth. So kana siya nga someone, so balik na kana siya nga someone mo gyapon siya ang manager. Bisan pag naay ka ng mga machine nga naay mga machine dira di na siya mulihok og walay mo operate, so the manager mo na siya ang mo-guide sa mga workers. So next slide please. So manaman ta sa historical background, the early examples of management sa kang Adam Smith ug sa Industrial Revolution. So ari na pud ta sa four major approaches to management theory, which is the classical approaches, the quantitative approach, the behavioral approach, and the contemporary. So let's keep in mind that kani nga siya nga mga approach approaches is trying to explain kung unsay ka-importante ang management sa kana nga time history, ilang mga backgrounds ug mga interests sa researcher. So next slide please. So first study of the management is the classical approach. So classical approach, it emphasizes rationality and making organization and workers as efficient as possible. So two major theories comprise the classical approach, the scientific management and general administrative theory. So next slide please. So the scientific management theory. So its contents were widely embraced by managers around the world. Taylor's book described the theory of scientific management. Kanang scientific management dahil nag-emphasize na siya sa importance of labor in the production and process and focuses on improving the efficiency of workers in the production. So he argued that kaning upat nga principle ako nang i-discuss later kanang would result in prosperity for both workers and management. So Taylor defined the one best way for a job to be done, like to do every part sa ilang mga tasks and to boost sa productivity. So Taylor worked at the Midvale and Bethlehem Steel Companies in Pennsylvania. As mechanical engineer with a Quaker and Puritan background, he was continually appalled by workers' inefficiency. Employees use vastly different techniques to do same job. They often took it easy in the job, and Taylor believed that workers' output was only about 1/3 of what's possible. So next slide please. So muna siya. So Frederick Taylor, an American engineer, discussed the scientific theory sa iyang book, which is the principle of scientific management. So he introduced the 4 principles of scientific management. First is develop a science of each element of an individual's work to replace the old rule or thumb method. So second, scientifically select and train, teach and develop the workers. Third, heartily cooperate with the workers so as to ensure that all work is done in accordance with the principle of science that has been developed. So last one is divide work and responsibility almost equally between management and workers. Management does all work for which it's better suited than the workers. Taylor became known as the father of scientific management. His ideas spread in the United States and to other countries and inspire others to study and develop of scientific management. So next slide please. So his prominent followers were Frank and Lillian Gilbert. So Frank is probably best known for his bricklayering experiment. So the Gilberts also experimented with designs and use of proper tools and equipment for optimizing work performance and invented a device called microchronometer that recorded a worker's hand and body motion and the amount of time spent doing each motion. Wasted motion missed by naked eye could be identified and eliminated. The Gilbert also devised a classification scheme to label 17 basic hand motion, such as search, grasp, hold, which they call Gertling. Sa kanang Gertling, si balira na sa ilang apelido. So this scheme gave the Gale a more precise way of analyzing a worker's exact hand motion. So next slide, please. So how today's managers use scientific management. When manager analyze the basic work tasks that must be performed, use time and motion study to eliminate wasted motion, hire the best qualified workers for a job, or design incentive system based on output, they're using the principles of scientific management. So the next theory is the general administrative theory. So this theory focused more on what managers So this theory focused more on what managers do and what constituted good management practice. So this theory can focuses sa overall management and emphasizing the role of managers. So next slide, please. So Henry Fayol. Fayol's attention was directed at the activities of all managers. He wrote from his personal experience as the managing director of a large French coal mining firm. Fayol described the practice of management as something distinct from accounting, finance, production, distribution, and other typical business functions. So Fayol is a French industrialist. So, he identified the 5 functions nga listed ganina sa chapter 1, which is katong planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating, or controlling. So on the other hand, nasa siya 14 principles of management. So next slide, please. So first is the division of work. So division of work is that specialization increases output by making its employees more efficient. So second is the authority. So authority manager must be able to give orders, and the authority gives them this right. The employers are expected nga mo comply and exercise their task responsibly. So third is the discipline. So employees must obey and respect the rules that govern the organization, and the violators of rules must be punished. So fourth is the unity of command. So every employee should receive and report orders to open supervisor. So fifth is the unity of direction. The organization should have a single plan of action to guide managers and workers, which means that the effort of the employees are guided toward the attainment of the organizational objectives. 6 is the subordination of individual interest to the general interest. So it is the organization over the individual interest of the employees. So 7 is the remuneration. Worker must be paid a fair wage for their services. So 8 is the centralization. Centralization is where the rules of all the employees are clarified, with emphasizes distinction between superior and subordinate rules. 9 is the scalar chain. This the communication should be open from the top management to the lowest rank. So 10 is the order. People and materials should be in the right place at the right time. So 11 is the equity, which means that fairness and order must be practiced to maintain employee commitment. So 12 is the stability of tenure of personnel. So this management should provide orderly personnel planning and ensure that replacements are available to fill vacancy. So Second to the last is the initiative to encourage employees to act on their own in support of the organization objective. And the last is the esprit de corps. So it is to promote teamwork and the unity of interest between the employees and the management. So next slide, please. So Max Weber, a German sociologist, contributed to develop of the administrative management through his study on public administration and bureaucracy. So bureaucracy, a form of organization characterized by division of labor, a clearly defined hierarchy, detailed rules and regulation, and interpersonal relationship. So bureaucracy, as described by Weber, it is a lot like scientific management in its ideology, both emphasizes rationality, predictability, impersonality, technical competence, and authoritarianism. So next slide, please. So here's the characteristic of Weber's bureaucracy. So ito sa division of labors, which is the jobs broken down into simple or routine and well-defined tasks. So authority of hierarchy, positions organized in a hierarchy with a clear chain of command. So formal selection, people selected for jobs based on technical qualifications. So formal rules and regulations, system of written rules and standard operating procedures. Impersonality, uniform applications of rules and controls not according to personalities. So the last one is the career orientation. So managers are career for professionals, not owners of unit they manage. So next slide, please. So how today's managers use general administrative theory. So several of our current management ideas and practices can be directed traced to the contribution of the general administrative theory, although many characteristics of Weber bureaucracy are still evident in the large organization. His model isn't as popular today as it was in 20th century. Some bureaucratic mechanisms are necessary to ensure that resources are used efficiently and effectively. So Weber's bureaucracy was attempt to formulate an idea prototype for organization. So many managers felt that the bureaucratic structures hinders individuals, employees, creativity, and limits an organization's ability to respond quickly to an increasingly dynamic environment. However, even in flexible organization of creative professionals such as Microsoft, Samsung, General Electric, or Cisco systems, some bureaucratic mechanisms are necessary to ensure that resources are used efficiently and effectively. So next slide, please. So the behavioral approach. The field of study that researches the actions or behavior of people at work is called organizational behavior. So kani siyang approach is more on focus siya sa mga tao sa organization. So much of what managers do today when managing people, motivating, leading, building trust, working with a team, managing conflict, and so forth has come out of OB research. So next slide, please. So early OB advocate So mo ni siya ang kani sila nga people ang mga mo nila mga individual ideas. So orita ni Christopher Barnard in 1930s. So iyang kuan is the actual manager who thought organization were social system that required cooperation. No? So he believes manager's job was to communicate and stimulate employees' high level of efforts. So the last one, first to argue the organization were open system. So next is Robert Owen in late 70s, concerned about the deplorable working condition, proposed idealistic workplace, and argued that money spent improving labor was smart investment. So third is Hugo Munsterberg in early 90s, pioneer in field of industrial psychology, scientific studies of people at work. And also he suggested using psychological tests for employee selection, learning theory concepts for employees training, and study of human behavior for employees motivation. So the last one is Mary Parker Follett in early 90s, one of the first to recognize that organization could be viewed from perspective of individual and group behavior. Also, he proposed more people-oriented ideas than scientific management followers thought organizations should be based on group ethics. So Follett and Chester Barnard believed that people were the most important assets sa usa ka organization and they should be managed properly. So their ideas provided the foundation of such management practice as employee selections procedures, motivation programs, and work teams. So this chart summarizes each individual's most important ideas. So next slide, please. So the most important contribution of the OB field came out of the Hawthorne studies, a series of studies conducted at Western Electric Company's work in Cerrero, Illinois. They wanted to examine the effect of various lighting levels on workers' productivity. Like any good scientific experiment, control and experimental groups were set up with the experimental groups being exposed to various lighting intensities and the control group working under a constant intensities. So next slide, please. So in 1927, Western Electric engineer asked Harvard professor Elton Mayo and his associate to join the study as consultant. Thus began a relationship that would last through 1932 and encompassed numerous experiments in the redesigning of job, changes in workdays and work week length, introduction of rest period, and individual versus group wage plans. So the researchers conclude that social norms or group standards were the key of determinants of individuals' work. So also, Mayo concluded that people's behavior and attitude are closely related, that the group's factors significantly affect individuals' behavior. The group standard established individual workers' output, and that money is less a factor in determining output that are group standard, group attribute, and security. So these conclusions led to a new emphasis on human behavior factor in the management of organization. So next slide, please. So how today's manager use the behavioral approach. So the behavioral approach has largely shaped how today's organizations are managed, from what that managers design jobs to the way that they work with employees' teams and the way that they communicate we see elements of the behavioral approach. So the next is the quantitative approach and contemporary approach, which will be discussed by Ms. Donna Marie Egos.
Thank you for that informative discussion, Ms. Nicole. So I'm going to proceed with the next approach, and that would be quantitative approach. So before we proceed with that, I'm going to tell you a story. Although passengers bumping into each other when trying to find their seats on an airplane can be a mild annoyance for them, it's a bigger problem for airlines because lines get backed up, slowing down how quickly the plane can get back in the air. Based on research in space-time geometry, one airline innovated a unique boarding process called reverse pyramid, and that has saved at least 2 minutes in boarding time. This is an example of quantitative approach, which is the use of quantitative techniques to improve decision making, and this approach is also known as management science. So, the quantitative approach evolved from mathematical and statistical solutions developed for military problems during World War II. So, imagine kaning approach kay gikan pa sa years, hundreds of years had passed, and then we have still preserved this approach and we use them in today's generation. So it involves applying statistics, optimization models, information models, computer simulations, and other quantitative techniques to management activities. Linear programming, for instance, is a technique that managers use to improve resource allocation decisions. So, work scheduling, for example, work scheduling can be more efficient as a result of critical path scheduling analysis. The economic order quantity model helps managers determine optimum inventory levels. So, what is economic order quantity model? This is a calculation companies perform that represents their ideal order size, allowing them to meet demands without overspending. Inventory managers calculate EOQ to minimize holding costs and excess inventory. So, total quality management, or TQM, is a management philosophy devoted to continual improvement and responding to customer needs and expectations. So, the term customer includes anyone who interact with the organization's products or services internally or externally. It encompasses employees and suppliers, as well as the people who purchase the organization's goods or services. Continual improvement isn't possible without accurate measurements, which requires statistical techniques that measure every critical variable in the organization's work processes. So, how do we define quality management? First, intense focus on the customer. The customer includes outsiders who buy the organization's products or services, and internal customers who interact with and serve others in the organization. So, when we say intense focus on the customers, we must not only focus on the customers outside the organization, but also those working inside the organization who also buys or uses the organization's products and services, because at the end of the day, they are both customers or consumers that acquire or require these products or services. Second, concern for continual improvement. Quality management is a commitment to never being satisfied. Very good is not good enough. Quality can always be improved. So, when we say quality management, we mean that being good, being very good, being the best. It is a great thing to be good, but as long as there is an opportunity to be better, then we should be better and always aim to be the best. As the world revolves and the time goes, we shall seek to improve, because that is what quality management is, to be able to evolve and improve to reach for the top. 3. Process focused. Quality management focuses on work processes as the quality of goods and services is continually improved. The focus is to improve the quality of an organization's outputs, including goods and services, through the continual improvement of internal practices. Total quality management aims to hold all parties involved in the production processes accountable for all over quality of the final product or service. Next would be improvement in the quality of everything in the organization does. This relates to the final product, how the organization handles deliveries, how rapidly it responds to complaints, how politely the phones are answered. So this is not just having high quality products offered. This is about the overall manner of the organization, how well they handle unexpected dilemmas, and how are they going to win back the heart of their customers by providing quality service. Next would be accurate measurements. Quality management uses statistical techniques to measure every critical variable in the organization's operations. These are compared against standards to identify problems, trace them to their roots, and eliminate their causes. And lastly, empowerment of employees. Quality management involves the people on the line in the improvement process. Teams are widely used in quality management programs as empowerment vehicles for finding and solving problems. So, how today's managers use quantitative approach. So, as we all know, these approaches were derived from years past, and we may think na how today's managers how are they going to use these approaches or apply these approaches to today's generation. So the quantitative approach contributes directly to management decision making in the areas of planning and control. For instance, when managers make budgeting, queuing, scheduling, quality control, and similar decisions, they typically rely on quantitative techniques. Specialized softwares have made the use of these techniques less intimidating for managers, although many still feel anxious about using them. So next would be contemporary approach. Give me one moment. Starting in the 1960s, management researchers began to look at what was happening in the external environment outside the boundaries of the organizations. Two contemporary management perspectives, these are systems and contingency, are part of this approach. A system is a set of interrelated and interdependent parts arranged in a manner that produces a unified whole. So, in simple terms, if we relate to human body, a system is like um, the respiratory system or digestive system. They are not only composed of one organ, but composed of several organs that work together to have the same goal or to produce the same purpose, right? So the two basic types of systems are closed and open. Closed systems are not influenced by and do not interact with the environment. In contrast, open systems are influenced by and do interact with their environment. Today, when we describe organizations as systems, we mean open systems. So, as you can see, an organization takes input or the resources from the environment and transforms or processes these resources into outputs that are distributed in the environment. The organization is open to and interacts with its environment. So how does the system approach contribute to our understanding of management? Researchers envisioned an organization as being made up of interdependent factors, including individuals, groups, attitudes, motive, formal structure, interactions, goal, status, and authority. What this means is that managers coordinate work activities in various parts of organization. They ensure that all these parts are working together so the organization's goal can be achieved. For example, the systems approach recognizes that no matter how efficient the production department might be, the marketing department must anticipate changes in customer stays and work with the product development department in creating products customers want or the organization's overall performance will suffer. So, systems approach. The systems approach implies that decisions and actions in one organization or organizational area will affect other areas. So, as we all know, system work as one. So, if one part of the system will fail, then it will affect the whole system. The systems approach recognizes that organizations are not self contained. They rely on their environment for essential inputs and as outlets to absorb their outputs. No organization can survive for long if it ignores government regulations, supplier relations, or varied external constituencies upon which it depends. So, the contingency approach, sometimes called the situational approach, says that organizations are different, face different situations or contingencies, and require different ways of managing. So, a good way to describe contingency is if then. If this is the way my situation is, then this is the best way for me to manage in this situation. Contingency approach. It intuitively logical. It's intuitively logical because organizations and even units within the same organization differ in size, goal, work, activity, and the like. It would be surprising to find universally applicable management rules that would work in all situations, yes. But of course, it's one thing to say that the way to manage depends on the situation, and another to say what the situation is. So, the primary value of the contingency approach is that it stresses there are no simplistic or universal rules for managers to follow. So these are common or popular contingency variables. Organization size. As size increases, so do the problems of coordination. For instance, the type of organization structure appropriate for an organization of 50,000 employees is likely to be inefficient for an organization of 50 employees. Routines of task technology. To achieve its purpose, an organization uses technology. Routine technologies require organizational structures, leadership styles, and control systems that differ from these required by customized or non routine technology. Next would be environmental uncertainty. The degree of uncertainty caused by environmental changes influences the management process. What works best in a stable and predictable environment may be totally inappropriate in rapidly changing and unpredictable environment. And lastly, individual tolerance. Individual differences. Individuals differ in terms of their desire of growth, autonomy, tolerance with ambiguity, and expectations. These and other individual differences are particularly important when managers select motivation techniques, leadership styles, and job designs. So, what do managers face today when managing? Although the dawn of the information age is said to have begun with Samuel Morse telegraph in 1837, the most dramatic changes in information technology have occurred in the latter part of the 20th century and have directly affected the manager's job. Managers now may manage employees who are working from home or working halfway around the world. So So an organization's computing resources used to be mainframe computers locked away in temperature-controlled rooms and only accessed by the experts. Now, practically everyone in an organization is connected, wired or wireless, with devices no longer than the palm of the hand. Just like the impact of industrial revolution in the 70s on the emergence of management, the information age has brought dramatic changes that continue to influence the way organizations are being managed. So, isn't it amazing that these approaches that were derived from years back were still served and be used by managers in today's generation? So we hope that these approaches, we will be able to apply these when we um, go and look for jobs, or we may be applying for a manager. We hope that we are able to use these approaches on being the manager of a certain company that we are handling or managing. So that will be the end of the module for the management history. Let me give the floor to the last presenters, which are Jerome and Jamaica Duran.
So thank you for that, Miss Donna, for very informative discussion. So good morning, everyone. My name is Jerome D. Villanueva, and together with Jamaica Marie Duran, we will going to discuss the chapter 2 entitled Understanding Management Context, Constraints, and Challenges. So for the learning outcomes, contrast the actions of managers according to the omnipotent and symbolic views. Describe the constraints and challenges facing managers in today's external environment. Discuss the characteristics and importance of organizational culture. And lastly, describe current issues in an organizational culture. So, in this chapter, we're going to look at cultures and other important aspects of management context. The difficulties in the external environment will be examined, and the qualities or the characteristics of organizational culture will be discussed. But before we address topics, it is important to consider first the 2 points or perspectives on how big of a role manager play in the success or failure of a business. So next slide please. So let's examine each viewpoint to try to determine how much credit or blame a manager should receive for the accomplishment or of their companies or in the performance in the organization. So the manager, omnipotent or symbolic. So omnipotent view of management is defined as the dominant view in management theory and society in general is that managers are directly responsible for an organizational success or failure. So in this view of management, direct credit is given to the manager if ever there is something good or bad happen in an organization or in the business or organizations. So in the other next in the other hand, symbolic view of management is defined as the view management theory that much of an organization's success or failure is due to external forces outside the manager's control. So, if ang omnipotent view of management is ang manager ang responsible in the outcomes of the organization, in this case, the symbolic view of management, the success or failure of an organization is said to be due to external factors or outside of the organization. So, what are the different external factors? So, we will discuss it later. So, next slide, please. So, in an omnipotent view, the differences in an organization's performance are assumed to be due to decisions and actions of its managers. And directly responsible ang managers if there's anything happen in an organization. So, also, in an omnipotent view, the good managers anticipate change, exploit opportunity, correct poor performance, and lead their organizations. When profits are up, managers take the credit and are rewarded with the bonuses, stock options, and the like. So, if a positive event occurred in the organizations, the managers get credited, rewarded, or sometimes kung unsa ang ganahan sa managers mo ihatag sa organizations. Meanwhile, when profits are down, top managers are often fired. So mo niya pagkaapan sa omnipotent view. They fire the managers because they believe that the new blood or new managers will bring improve to the results of an organization. So, for example, next. For example, the CEO of Cat Corporation was fired because some of its largest customers were threatening to leave and the company's shares prices have declined sharply. In this view, someone has to be held accountable when organizations perform poorly regardless of the reasons and that someone is the manager. So this example can be found in the book. So if we analyze this situation, when the things go well, managers get credited. At the same time, kung bati isa ang performance sa organizations, ang managers gyapon gipasanginlan. So to have more about to have more idea about this view, this kind of view sa DI isn't only limited in business. This isn't only limited in business organization, kay pwede sad siya sa mga sport such as team coaches, like for example sa usa ka sports kung bati ang performance sa usa ka team kasagaran na kay i-fire nila ang mga coach. So mo na example lang siya sa omnipotent view. Then next, so a manager, the symbolic view, a manager's ability to affect performance outcomes is influenced and constrained by external factors such as economy, customers, government, competitors, industry, and industry conditions. So, according to this view, it's unreasonable to expect managers to significantly affect an organization performance. Like tungod dili rekta sa managers ang blame sa gipakita na performance sa organizations. Instead, they believe that the performance is influenced by factors over which managers have little control, such as the economy, customer, government, policies, competitors, actions, and industry conditions, and also the decision made by the previous managers. So, for example, next. For example, in 1990s, Cisco system was the picture of success. Growing rapidly, it was widely praised by analysts for its brilliant strategy, masterful management and acquisitions, and superb customer focus. As Cisco performance declined during the early part of the 21st century, analysts said that its strategy was flawed, its acquisition approach was haphazard, and its customer service was poor. So, if we analyze that situation, when Cisco system performance went down, analysts blamed their acquisition strategies and customer service. So, in this view of management, we can determine that the actual part that managers play in an organizational success or failure is limited, since dili direct niya ang responsibility sa nahitabong bati nga performance sa organization. So, next. So, constraints on managerial discretion. Discretion in business defined when a company or organizations are responsible for deciding when or how to perform certain tasks or work based on their knowledge and ability to judge. But in managerial discretions, managers are given position of powers to act on behalf of their organization. So, as what you can see in the figure, the managerial discretion is composed of organizational environment and organizational culture in which external constraints comes from the organization environment and the internal constraints come from the organization culture. In my case, I will going to discuss further about the organizational environment or external environment, and the next report I will discuss further the organizational culture. So next. So the term external environment refers to factors and forces outside the organizations that affect its performance. It includes several different components such as the economic, global, political or legal, social or cultural, technological, and demographic. So, next. So, Next. So economic component encompasses factors such as interest rates, inflation, changes in disposable income, stock market fluctuations, and business cycle stage. So the economic components could be happen in the country's economy as well as on an international level that affects the performance of an organization. So even if the organization has a minimal control over or no control over what's happening in the economy, then the demographic component is concerned with the trends in population characteristics such as age, race, gender, education level, geographic location, income, and family compositions, while the political and legal components look at federal, state, and local laws as well as global laws and laws of the other countries. So the political and legal environment in which a company operate also has an impact on what's company's success. So the political changes and legal changes might affect the ability of a company to operate, and sometimes those are favorable or sometimes those are unfavorable because there are some laws that gives impact to the performance of the organization. So next is the social or cultural. The social the socio-cultural components is concerned with societal and cultural factors such as values, attitude, trends, tradition, lifestyles, belief, taste, and patterns of behavior. So the perspective that people will have on, for example, the environment and perspective that people have on individual health, the new concept that have significant effects on organization operate, for example, the kinds of products they're able to sell and also how people respond to this product and different activities in an organization. So next is the technological. The technological component is concerned with scientific or industrial innovation. So in technological factor, the internet is a great example of how technology has a major impact or the performance on the performance and results of the organizations and how managers are able to succeed or how they don't succeed in running their organization. So and lastly, the global component encompasses those issues associated with globalizations and our world economy. So the international environment, so for now, we are live in a connected world. And so what's happening on global scale, and it has direct effect on the success of our managers in running an organization despite the manager experience and skill set. So in this case, the global component is somewhat related to economic component kaya nag-focus siya sa global economy. So overall, all of these external environment factors have significant influence on the manager's result outside or beyond the manager expertise and skill set. But we're going to take a closer look at the two of them, which is the economic and the demographic aspect. So next. So in economic environment, it includes global economic decline. So global economic decline is also known as global recession, in which it is an extended period of economic decline around the world. Pero not only in global, but also it can happen in specific country, which is also known as economic crisis or great recession. So the best examples are job cutting, which means a reduction number of jobs in an organizations and lacks of credits available to fund business activity, in which it is the inability to get funding and will inhibit your business ability to purchase assets and resources needed for the organization. So for example, General Motors declares bankruptcy. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development predicts some 25 million unemployed individuals globally, 8.4 million jobs in the United States vanished, and the economic vocabulary includes terminology such as wraparound, mortgages, and straight test. So in these situations, the General Motors get bankrupted due to the economic condition, and in such situation, managers will not be blamed. So, kung sa siya nga view, so ikuan siya symbolic view kay di man direct sa managers ang responsibility sa nahitabo. So, next is the economic inequality. So, it refers to unequal distributions of income and opportunity between different groups in society, such as widening income gap. So overall, to understand economic environment is like we need to look at the changes that have taken place and the impact of those changes on the way organizations are managed. Kasi syempre, if something happen in the economy, there is no doubt that the business organization will be most negatively impacted. So next. So demographic environment. So let us refer to the three of the most well-known age groups. So first is the baby boomers from 1946 to 1964. So very large in population, that's why they are called boomers. As they cycle through the many stages of life, they have greatly impacted every part of the outside environment, which means they change their educational system, their entertainment, and also their lifestyle. The next is the Generation Y or millennials from 1978 to 1994. So change technology and clothing style. So Gen Y is affecting organizational workplaces as they change from technology, clothing styles, and work attitudes. So the next is the generation Z or post millennial from 2000 to present, or I'm not sure if generation Z pa bata karon or lain na sa nga generation. However, this generation is also called I generation, brought up with technologies because primarily this generation grown up with technology that customize everything to the individual. So the best example is Kindle versus iPad or Nexus Sony Walkman versus iPad. So this example is like different technology used in different generations. So demographics are cohorts. Demographic age cohorts are important to our study of management because large number of people at certain stages in life can constrain decision and actions taken by business or other organization. So, so next. So let's take a look at some specific example of interaction between the external environment and management, specifically on how the external environment affects managers. So first is the job and employment. So one of the most powerful constraints managers face is the impact of such changes on jobs and employment, both in poor condition and in good conditions. So when economies arise or growing in general, organization benefit in that situation, such as companies grow, sales grow, or increase in demand for jobs, and that increase in demand for jobs and that favorable towards economy in which that organization is working. While in the other hand, when economy is down, it also shows effects but a negative one since it is in poor condition naman ang economy. So next is the accessing environmental uncertainty. So it is another important concept relating to the interactions between the external environment and management. So it refers to the degree of change and complexity in an organization environment. So it is affected by degree of change and environmental complexity. So in some na degree of change. So next slide. So degree of change is the first dimension of uncertainty is the degree of change. If the component in an organization's environment change frequently, it is dynamic environment. If change is minimal, so it is a stable one. So a stable one environment might be one with no new competitors, few technological breakthroughs by current competitors, and little activity by pressure groups to influence the organizations and so forth. For example, Zippo Manufacturing, best known for its Zippo lighters, faces a relatively stable environment with few competitors and little technological change. The main external concerns for the company is probably by the declining number of tobacco smokers. Although the company lighters have other uses and global markets remains attractive. So which means that nga stable gyapon ang environment sa Zippo Manufacturing since remains attractive man gyapon ang market nila. While in contrast, the recorded music industry faces a dynamic or highly uncertain and unpredictable environment. So, digital formats and music downloading sites turn the industry upside down and both high levels of uncertainty. So like in this case, unpredictable na ang environment sa kaning digital kaning usa ka business environment ani kaning digital formats and music downloading sites. So unpredictable siyang environment, which is one of the reason nganong dynamic na ang degree of change. So ang degree of change overall focus na siya sa stable or dynamic environment in which kung predictable siya, stable ang environment, o kung unpredictable sad siya, dynamic sad ang environment. So next. So environmental complexities, the number of components in an organization environments, and the extent of the knowledge that the organization has about those components. So environmental complexity also focuses on how simple and complex the organization is. Therefore, an organization with fewer competitors, customers, suppliers, government agency, and so forth faces a less complex and uncertain or simple environment. So on the other hand, organizations deal with environmental complexity in various ways. So for example, Hasbro toy company simplified its environment by acquiring many of its competitors. So in this situation, mula na ni siya ka ng term na if you cannot beat them, buy them. So ingani ang ilang ways para mas simplify nila ang organization's environment. But how does the concept of environmental uncertainty influence manager? So as we go to the next page, next slide please. So it shows the environmental uncertainty matrix in which each of the four cells represent the different combinations of degree of complexity and degree of change. So the stable and the dynamic refers to the degree of change na nasa babaw, while the simple and the complex refers to the environmental complexity kang nasa kilid. So kung ato nabasahon, in cell 1, stable and simple environment, it represents the lowest of environmental uncertainty. So like predictable and only few components in the environment. Meanwhile, in cell number 4, the dynamic and complex environment has the highest level of environmental uncertainty in which unpredictable and many components in environment. So managers have greatest influence on organizational outcomes in cell number 1 and least in cell number 2. Kay ma-predict pa ang cell number 1, and also managers would prefer to operate in the least uncertain environment. However, if karon ang basihan, the nature of the external environment today is that most industries today are facing more dynamic change, making their environment more uncertain. Kay tungod daghan na mga new entrants sa organizations, that's why unpredictable ang today's environment. Pero kung usa ka wise nga manager, so expect the unexpected na lang. So next. So aside from the job unemployment accessing environmental uncertainty, so managing stakeholders relationship also were an important component of external environment. So stakeholders are any constituencies in the organization environment that are affected by an organization's decisions and actions. So stakeholders are the individuals and the organizations that are affected by the activity and decisions of another organization. So on the other hand, managers should even care about the stakeholders relationship because it can lead to desirable organizational outcomes such as improved predictability of environmental changes, more successful innovations, greater degree of trust among stakeholders, and greater organizational flexibility to reduce the impact of change. And also, an organizations depend on this external group as source of inputs such as resources and as outlets for outputs the goods and services. So managers need to consider their interests as they make decisions. So the next slide will show the different stakeholders in the organization. So next. So these are the different stakeholders in the organizations, and it includes the customer, social and political action groups, competitor, trade and industry association, government, media, suppliers, communities, shareholders, unions, and employees. So, although some of the stakeholders aren't directly connected to the organizations, but they're influenced by and they have relationship within the organization. So that's why they're considered as stakeholders. So overall, the organizational stakeholders are influenced and impacted by the decisions, activities, and products and services sold and offered by the organization. So this is the end of my topic, and chapter 2 will be followed by further discussion from Miss Jamaica Maridra. Thank you.
So, good morning, everyone. Once again, I am Jamaica Marie Odoran, and this time I will be discussing with you guys the organizational culture and its constraints and challenges. So, who among you here, before pa? So each of us has a unique personality. We all know that, and personality traits and characteristics that influence the way we set and interact with others. And when we describe someone kanang mura siya warm, relaxed, butan, matinabangon, we're literally describing that as a personality trait. So let's talk about the organization. An organization has also a personality trait which we call as a culture. So unsa ganito siya guys, it is called a culture. And that culture influences the way employees act and interact with others, just like with ourselves. So next slide, please. So now, what is organizational culture? Let's have organizational culture has been described as the shared values, principles, traditions, and ways of doing things that influence the way organizational members act. In most organizations, these shared values and practices has evolved over time and generation to a large extent where it is done that on how things are done around the work environment. Um, so our work definition of culture implies only three things. First, we have here that culture is a perception. Perception means it says that a culture is somehow like a perspective of some employee or employer. So it's not something that can be physically touched or seen, but employees perceive it on the basis of what they experience within the organization. Second, we have here the organizational culture, and that organizational culture, it says that it is descriptive. It's concerned with how members perceive the culture and describe it. From the word descriptive, it usually utilizes how employees describe the work environment, not with whether they like it. And finally, we have here, even though individuals may have different backgrounds at work, etc., on the different organizational levels, they always tend to describe the organization's culture or beliefs in similar terms. So that's what we call the shared aspect of culture. Next slide, please. So we have here the
exhibit entitled Dimensions of Organizational Culture. So this was a research that suggests 7 dimensions, which we have here. The attention to detail, outcome orientation, people orientation, team orientation, aggressiveness, stability, innovation, and risk taking. So this research suggests 7 dimensions that can be used to describe an organization's culture. These dimensions usually range from low to high, meaning dili siya kanang typical nga culture, which is the low. Mo na siya ang dili typical nga culture, kana ang low nga range level sa organization, and ang very typical niya kay ang mao to siya ang high level of organization. So describing an organization using these 7 dimensions give a composite picture of the organization's culture. In many organizations, as we can research or experience, one cultural dimensions often is emphasized more than the others and essentially shapes the organization's personality and ang weight put sa organizational members on how to work. Next slide, please. So we have here the strong cultures. So all organizations have cultures, man, diba? But not all cultures equally influence employees' behaviors and actions. So that's why we have strong cultures, and it is those in which the key values are deeply held and widely shared, and it may have and had a greater influence on employees than do the weaker cultures. So let's have the contrasting organizational cultures, which is that this organization A is the strong culture, while organization B is the weak culture. So we have here the description of organization A. It says that it is a manufacturing firm. Managers are expected to fully document all decisions, and good managers are those who are provide detailed data to support their recommendations, and their creative decisions that incur significant change or risk are not encouraged. So, diba, as you can notice sa organization A, it is a very healthy work environment. It has also a strong cultures which strongly affect the way that the employees will work on that work environment. So let's have here the organization B. Similarly, the organization B is also a manufacturing firm. However, the management encourages and rewards risk-taking and change. Sorry, I interchanged the strong and weak cultures. By the way, guys, the organization A is the weak culture, while the organization B is the strong culture. So we have here the characteristic of the strong culture, which is the organization B, and those culture helps the
The more employees accept the organization's key values and the greater their commitment to those values, the stronger the culture is, where we can notice it in the organization B statement. Most organizations have moderate to strong cultures. That is, there is relatively high agreement on what's important, what what defines a good employee behavior, and what it takes to get ahead, and so forth. The stronger a culture becomes, the more it affects the way managers plan, organize, lead, and control. So that's how it works. Next slide, please. So we have here the exhibit strong versus weak culture. So we so it is clearly seen that strong cultures, which in the we discussed in the latter, it is it has a values that is widely shared, and culture conveys consistent messages about what's important, and most employees can tell stories about company history or heroes, and employees strongly identify with culture, and they easily blend with the work environment, and the strong connection between shared values and behavior, as you can notice on the exhibit that shown before. So let's have the weak cultures. Values are limited to a few people. Usually it is from the top managers. So it is very unhealthy. And to think that the organization B is um, their culture sends contradictory messages about what's important. So employees have also little knowledge of company story or heroes. So that's a no-no. And employees have little identification with culture. And finally, we have the organization B has a little connection between shared values and behavior. So imagine if you work on such an environment with a weak culture. It is very depressing and stress kanang kuan, di ba, kanang mo add on ra siya sa atong mga stress. So that's why we aim to have that strong culture someday. So let's have the next slide. So here again we have the exhibit where it is establishing and maintaining culture. So this illustrates how an organization's culture is established and maintained. The original source of culture usually reflects the vision of the founders, which we call the philosophy of organization founders. So next is the culture is in always the work environment or in the place. However, certain organizational practices will always help maintain that. And for example, kanang during the kanang mga apply mo o trabaho, managers typically judge job candidates not only on the job requirements, but how they might fit in the organization. That's why they have the interview, the assessment, and so forth. At the same time, job candidates find out information about the organization and determine whether they are comfortable with what they see. So that's how it works with the selection criteria.
So let's have the top management. The actions of top managers also have a major impact on the organization's culture. So, mao to siya. And finally, we have here the socialization. So, organizations help employees adapt to the culture through socialization. It is a process that helps newbies or the baby boomers learn the organization's way of doing things. For example, at Starbucks, are you familiar with Starbucks? So, new employees at Starbucks stores go through 24 hours training duration schedule, and that training helps the employees turn them into brewing consultants, which we call in local term as baristas. So they learn during the training, they learn the philosophy, company jargon, which is jargon. Jargon is what it's the term that words coming out from a certain organization. It's certainly not a general word, and even employees at Starbucks during training know learn how to assist the customers with decisions about beans, grinds, and espresso machines. So that's how where organizations comes from and how it continues an organization's culture. So next slide, please. So we have here how does employees learn culture? Employees learn an organization's culture in a number of ways. The most common are stories, rituals, materials, artifacts, and symbols, and most importantly, the language. Next slide, please. So, how does culture affect manager? It is an exhibit entitled "A Managerial Decisions Affected by Culture." So we have here the planning, the degree of risk that plans should contain, whether plans should be developed by individuals or teams, and it is also the degree of environmental scanning in which management will engage. So let's proceed to organizing. So how much autonomy should be designed into employees' jobs, whether it has tasks that should be done by individuals or in teams. It is also the degree to which department managers interact with each other. So we have here the third one, which is the leading, the degree to which managers are concerned with increasing employee job satisfaction, what leadership styles are appropriate, whether all disagreements, even constructive ones, should be eliminated. So that should be managerial decisions affected by cultures by should possess with managers. So lastly, we have here the controlling. It is whether to impose external controls or to allow employees to control their own actions. Certainly, for example, in some airlines, they they allow their kanang staffs like the flight attendants, the baggage, the customer service representative, the gate agents. They allow them to make their own decisions whether what is the consequences will be. Um, Controlling, and that's what we call controlling. So it also includes what criteria should be emphasized in employee performance evaluations, and what the repercussions will occur from exceeding one's budget. So next slide, please. So let's have here the chapter 2.4, which is the current issues in organizational culture. So before we tackle about the organizational culture constraints and challenges, and now I will be discussing with you guys the current issues in organizational culture. So let's have how to create an innovative culture. So do you wonder how does innovative culture look like? So according to Swedish researcher Goran Ekvall, it would be characterized by the following: the challenge and involvement. So are employees involved in, motivated by, and committed to long-term goals and success of the organization? We should also consider the freedom. Can employees independently define their work, exercise discretion, and take initiative in their day-to-day activities? And let's have the trust and openness. Are employees supportive and respectful to each other? Next one is the idea time. And do individuals or the workers have time to elaborate on new ideas before taking actions? And the next one is the playfulness and humor. Is the workplace spontaneous and fun? Is as a manager you should have for example, you should have a team building to enhance your employees socialization. So let's move on to the conflict resolution. Do individuals make decisions and resolve issues based on the good of the organizations versus personal interest? And the debates. Are employees allowed to express opinions and put forth ideas for considerations and review? So finally, we have here the last one on how to create an innovative culture, which is the risk taking. Do managers tolerate uncertainty and ambiguity, and are employees rewarded for taking risks? So Naaba, so let's proceed to the next slide. So creating a customer responsive culture. So again, what does customer responsive culture look like? So as you can see at the book, it shows that it is there we have a exhibit entitled Creating a Customer Responsive Culture. So this exhibit describes the 5 characteristics of customers responsive culture and offers suggestions as to what managers can do to create that type of culture. So next slide, please. The last part of current issues in organizational culture is the spirituality in the organizational culture. So, what is a workplace spirituality? Um, it is a culture in which organizational values promote a sense of purpose through meaningful work taking place in the context of community. For example, organizations with a spiritual culture recognize that people have a mind and a spirit seeking to find a meaning and purpose in their work and desire to connect with other human beings and be part of that work environment or that work community. And such that desires aren't limited to workplaces, as a recent study showed that college students, for example, also are searching for meaning and purpose in life. Ngano daw nag-search mo og kanang meaning and purpose sa inyong life? Ay naman sigma yung mga guys. So, workplace spirituality seems to be important now for a number of reasons. First is that employees are looking for ways to cope with the stresses and pressures of a turbulent pace of life. Siyempre, during our working days, we always feel that we are stressed, we are pressured to do all the tasks that was given to us. So, for example, contemporary lifestyles, single parent families, so it gives us stresses, the geographic mobility, our temporary jobs, technologies that create distance from people, di ba? Underscore the lack of community that many people feel. So, it's normal that as humans, we always crave for involvement and connection. In addition, also, as a newbie in job, we are always looking for something meaningful, something beyond that job that has given. Diba, when we are first in that thing, like for example, when you applied on your first job, kana excited kay ka mo musud kay tungod ka ng mao na to siya ang bago nga chapter sa imong life. Char. Nya. Sample sa first day of school nimo, di ba? Excited kay ka kay first day na another year, another assignments, mga inana, another challenge. And so that's the spirituality of the workplace. So others wish to integrate their personal life values with their professional lives. For others also, formalized religion hasn't worked and they continue to look for anchors to replace a lack of faith and to feel a growing sense of emptiness. So what type of culture can do all these things, DI? So what differentiates spiritual organizations from their non-spiritual counterparts? And also, research shows that spiritual organizations tend to have 5 cultural characteristics. So we have here the strong sense of purpose. Yes, sir. Last na ko, sir. Spiritual organizations build their cultures around a meaningful purpose, while prophets, kay important man siya na siya, umao na siyang one reason nganong ni applied ba kanang even so they're not the primary values of the organizations. That's it. So let's proceed to number 2. Let's focus on individual development. Spiritual organizations recognize the worth and value of individuals. They aren't just providing jobs. A workplace or a company should seek to create cultures in which employees can continually grow and learn. So let's have the trust and openness in a workplace. Spiritual organizations are characterized by what we call a mutual trust, honesty, and openness. Managers aren't afraid, should not be afraid to admit mistakes, and they tend to extremely upfront the customers, employees, and suppliers. So next we have the employee empowerment. Managers trust employees to make thoughtful and conscientious decisions. Um, like before akong gisulti ninyo katong for example the some airlines kay kanang employee airlines kay kanang they are encouraged to take whatever action they deem necessary to meet that customers needs or help their fellow workers even if kanang it means going against company policies. So di ba nice kaayo? So let's proceed to the toleration of employee expression. The final characteristic that differentiates spirituality is based organizations is that they don't stifle employee organizations. Okay, sir. They always should allow people to be themselves, to express their moods, their feelings without that guilt or fear of kanang something approaching someone. So that's all for my topic, and thank you everyone for listening.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Kuan pa ba? Kanang nagmata ba tanan?
Sir, ang among quiz, sir.
Okay. So ang quiz ninyo kay pwede ra kuan pwede ra offline lang. So ihatag lang siya within this week. They make sure lang to submit the scores within this week or pwede ra pud next week. So since ako naman ang meeting, ikuan yun, paki-raise kita ang hand sa atong mga reporters because we will be doing a Q&A. Then ang mga daily reporters ako ang daily reporters ako ang akong pangutanon for us to check if naminaw ba gid. Sige. Then once ikaw ang mabilian, so kindly turn on your camera and answer the question. So first question is that what is management in your own words? Can we ask Makasero?